Hi, it's Carrie from Twisted Author, and I'm here with Erich Hoyt, who is an award-winning author, speaker, conservationist, adventurer, explorer. And I just want to start off, first of all, by saying that I was very inspired growing up with your book, Walker, The Whale Called Killer. This is my second copy, the new edition, because my first one was ruined in a flood, but I'm sure you've inspired many people. And I hear you've read or you've written or co-written over 25 books and over 100 articles. Can you tell us a little bit about what the subject matter ranged from with that wide variety of
Sure.
articles and
Yes.
writing pieces?
Yes. Be happy to. Hi. Yes, the Orca book was my first book, and it really set me on a path of being interested in the ocean and really exploring everything to do with the ocean. So, three or four of my books have gone into the deep sea, looking at creatures of the deep and trying to dispel some of the myths there, as well as trying to bring giant squid and but also lots of little things to life for people who haven't had the chance to see them. I mean, most of us have never seen. What we've seen on the ocean has just been the stuff that comes to the surface,
Right.
or gets hauled out. And we've got 11 kilometers, 7 miles of deep sea in some parts of the ocean, and just very little idea of what's going on there. So that was a great chance to explore all those mysteries and look at the history as well as the biology, but to tell it as a story. I like telling stories, and I did a couple of those books on deep sea creatures for kids, and then some for adults too. And lots of photographs and maps and that sort of thing. My other passion, I'll just quickly say,
Sure.
I had an insect and an ant period in
I
the
saw
middle.
that on your website. I was going to ask you about that. That's a wide range.
Well, it was a chance. I had a fellowship at MIT and Harvard in the mid or late 1980s, and was lucky to get to know E.O. Wilson and be invited on some of his expeditions to Costa Rica, for ant exploring, and really started looking at social behavior, which I'd looked at with whales and dolphins, and particularly killer whales, starting to look at it in very minute forms, and I mean, you could get 30 different species on a single log in the rainforest, and you could look at all the stuff that was going on and see it, whereas in the ocean you might have to travel hundreds or even thousands of miles to get comparative studies that were like that. So I had a 2 or 3 year period where I looked at all that stuff and wrote a couple of popular books to just explore my interest and learn about it. For me, writing books is really kind of an excuse to learn about it, and I always feel if I'm passionate about something, then maybe I can get other people excited. So that's the whole motivation. But I try and keep some science in there, as well as storytelling, and conservation is always at the forefront. And Yeah, so that's.
Now, it's interesting that you say that because one of the quotes that I really loved from you was that you've never held, and I'm paraphrasing, but you've never held a traditional job. You've just gone where your passions and your interests have taken you. So, what are some of the fascinating places that your passions and interests have taken you around the world?
Well, besides the ones I'm was talking about, I mean, I was interested in whale watching for a period. You know, One of the early books I did was on whale watching after the killer whale book, and traveled to more than 50 countries to go whale and dolphin watching, which was a real education in terms of seeing how people relate in different areas of the world to whales and connect with them. And I think I think most of uh, part of the journeying is not necessarily physical. And of course, with COVID, we've really seen how
Mm.
far we can go with Zoom and with other tools, and inside our own, in our own heads, really to find out things. And I really, I've always liked asking questions, and going to scientists to really trying to piece things together and reading the papers, and then trying to um, talk about it in a in a in a way that's accessible to other people. So for me, that's part of the exploration. It's an idea, and mapping out a structure uh, to try and unwrap that idea, and to communicate it to other people. And that takes you on a journey that's not always, partly physical, but also mental, and um, and all of that as well.
Now, so many people would say, "Oh, I would love to do something like that. I would love to explore. I'd love to follow my passions." But life got in the way and an office job got in the way. What is your advice? Because I'm sure people have asked you this. What is your advice to people who really want to go out and follow their dreams?
Well, I think you follow your dreams. You don't give up on it, and you have to put the time in, and be willing to work hard, to follow your dreams. It sounds counterintuitive, but there's work involved with that, as well as the usual work, the 9 to 5 work. I mean, I was just determined early on that I was not going to do not going to take all the paths that were being offered to me, for an easy,
Mm.
one step after another. I was going to do something different. And so I've sort of consistently chosen things that I thought might interest me, and followed, and said no to a lot of other things. And I've been incredibly lucky. But I've had periods also of not, living very, very close to the edge, and I mean, I was at one point writing Orca. I was 7 months behind on my rent,
Right.
and I did eventually pay it, but it was, I had a very understanding landlord, and that was rent on one single room. It was not carrying a big burden or anything like that. So I think you have to be prepared to keep your overhead low. That's what I tell my own children who are interested in doing creative work, or trying other paths. You keep your overhead low, and it buys you freedom in a sense.
Right.
So and it buys you the time. Malcolm Gladwell talks about the 10,000 hours needed to to achieve competence in something, that Bill Gates and the Beatles and others had that. And whether it's 10,000 hours or not, I don't know, but you need to put the time in, and you need to have uninterrupted time to devote to it, and ideally in your 20s and 30s. But some people do it later.
Right.
Nothing to say you can't stop working if you're in a job that's not making you happy in your 40s, and try something else then. So yeah, it's commitment, and it's belief in yourself when nobody else believes in you. It's sounds, you know, it's all the cliches, but it's true.
Sometimes that's what it comes down to. Sometimes I think people overcomplicate things and it just comes down to dedication and sometimes sacrifice, but certainly it sounds like you've led an amazing life. So what is the future hold? Are there any projects that you're working on? Anything coming up?
There's tons of stuff. I mean, it gets more complicated, I think, as you get older, because all the interests that you've had are still there, and you've added a lot of things. And if you could look around my room, I mean, it's absolutely, there are piles that are relate to different interests. I for a while, I bought about 30 clipboards, and each one has a separate set of ideas related to a project. And some of them are really big clipboards because I like to think in blocks and write, do diagrams as well. So those kinds of things. I mean, right now I'm working on a book on black water plankton, which is the really tiny stuff. I mean, I don't know if you can see that, but it can be just even a few millimeters. And in the last few years, photographers in the Gulf Stream and Philippines and off California and Hawaii, for example, have started taking macro photographs at night in the open ocean, and have come up with these amazing images. So, and the stories are really great too, because these are juvenile, mostly juveniles and larvae of mature, fish and jellyfish and I mean, everything you can imagine in the ocean. However, you can't necessarily tell what species it is, because the juveniles and the larvae look different than they will as parents. And in fact, some of these larvae for fish have, really fantastic. I mean, flounder is a good example. Has amazing fins that are, flamboyant, and fake tentacles that, and these are things that have evolved just for that larval stage to ward off predators,
That's,
or give, yeah,
that's amazing. I had no idea. Fake tentacles.
yeah, but when they become adults, they go down to the bottom, they settle, they look totally different. The eyes migrate to one side of the face because they're going to be lying in the depths, and so the evolutionary pressures as an adult are totally different. And a lot of times the larval in the larval species haven't been connected to the adults. They might think they're different, or so that with genetic work is now finally starting to be sorted out, which is really interesting. So I've been talking with scientists and divers who've been doing this work all through the summer, and I'm now putting together the photographs and text and captions, and it's really exciting. I like being on projects where there's not that much known.
Right.
And it's like when the killer whale book came out, there were no books on killer whales.
Right. And that was the only thing I could get my hand on as a kid. And what was 1981 that book came out?
1981 was the first edition. Yeah. So, I mean, that's has always appealed to me, to be able to do something that hasn't yet been done, and to try and put it out there.
Well, you've inspired me, and I'm sure there are so many people out there who have listened to you or read something you've written, and you probably have no idea how many people around the world you've inspired that will never get to speak to you. So it was really a pleasure being able to connect with you. And I just, again, want to let you know what an impact you had on me growing up, and you inspired me to want to conserve whales and learn all about them. So thank you very much, and thank you for taking the time today to explain all your passions and give such wonderful advice to everybody else.
It's a pleasure, Carrie. Good to meet you.
Oh, nice to meet you too.